There's a lot of buzz about bringing another professional sports team here to Utah.
And that's why we're dedicating the next 30 minutes to share with you where the process stands and what the possibility means for the entire state of Utah and your family.
What would it do for Utah to have another team?
Yeah, look, it would be an incredible opportunity for Utah.
On both fronts, the city would do really well. I mean, just look at the way the city has embraced the Jazz.
I think Salt Lake supports those teams and would support those teams magnificent.
The good news in Utah is I think there's a lot of optionality, and our fan base is growing everywhere.
Live, streaming, and on the KUTV app. This is KUTV 2 News at 4.
Thanks everybody for joining us on 2 News at 4 o'clock. We have a very special town hall for you this afternoon. We are devoting the next 30 minutes to taking a much deeper look at the future of professional sports right here in Utah. I'm Jim Spiewak.
And I'm Jamie McGriff. Our coverage for you begins right now with Brian Schnee speaking with several local officials with the prospects of teams coming to the state. But actually first we're going to turn our attention to Daniel Woodruff, who's live at Smith's Ballpark on the push to bring Major League Baseball to Utah. Daniel.
Yeah, Utah trying very hard right now to bring a Major League Baseball team here to Salt Lake City. Of course, the Bees behind me, they're a minor league team, and they'll be moving soon to the city of South Jordan. Today I talked with the governor about where things stand with that effort, and he says baseball isn't the only sport that Utah could soon see. Utahns love their sports, cheering on the Jazz since 1979 and Major League Soccer's Real Salt Lake since 2005. But it seems there's an appetite for more.
Absolutely.
Connie and Sue outside Smith's Ballpark say they'd love to see a Major League Baseball team in the Beehive State.
Just the atmosphere and just the fun and the excitement of the professional players, and yeah.
They're not the only ones.
I would like to see it. I just hope the public will actually support it.
State and community leaders believe the public would, announcing back in April a push to bring an MLB franchise to Utah. Where do we stand on getting a pro team, another one here in Utah?
Well, the good news is we are definitely in the mix.
Governor Spencer Cox tells me they've gotten lots of positive feedback from the MLB, which is said to be looking at expanding by 2 teams.
We feel very good about our chances.
Do you see a future where other sports might come? Football, hockey?
The NHL is certainly on the list right now. We know that Ryan Smith and others have been having conversations with the National Hockey League. They're looking at the potential for expansion.
If we had a hockey team here, I'm a hockey nut.
University of Utah football coach Kyle Whittingham would love to see that happen.
I think hockey fits really well, or would fit really well in this community, an NHL team, and I'd be at just about every game, I know that.
And you're a football guy. Do you think pro football is ever coming here? Or?
Probably not. I would say that's not in the cards nearly as much of a chance as the hockey and baseball, and I don't see that happening.
The governor also believes the NFL is more of a long shot for Utah, but he says hockey and baseball are within reach.
I think both of those are very likely over the next 5 years that we potentially see 2 major sports franchises landing here in Utah. This is not some long shot. We are very much in the running for both of those opportunities.
Now, the Miller family and the Larry H. Miller Company are the ones that are leading this effort, the group that's trying to push for Major League Baseball here in the state of Utah. They've identified a site on the city's west side for a possible ballpark. We will see if Salt Lake City becomes one of those spots for an MLB expansion down the road. Live in Salt Lake City, Daniel Woodruff, KUTV 2 News.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel. So Utah is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing state in the country, and Utah is in the market, as you just heard right there, to bring a couple teams here to the Beehive State. But the questions that still remain, can Utah support more teams, and do the leagues either want to expand or move an existing team here? The most likely option would be Major League Baseball, National Hockey League team, as you just heard right there. And there's more than just talk about these prospects. The Miller family leading a coalition of politicians, sports figures, and other business leaders to make a bid for an MLB team.
And they've identified a piece of land a stadium could be built on. and have the funding to make it happen. And the billionaire owner of the Utah Jazz and RSL, Ryan Smith, is on record saying that he wants to grow his sports empire. Smith was asked in the last few weeks about the prospect of bringing an NHL team to Utah, and here's what he had to say.
I'm in close communication with Gary Bettman, and they know our intent. Timing's everything, and I'm not saying that's going to be it could be months, it could be years, but I think that there's a lot of mutual respect, and I think it's a perfect fit for everything that we want to go do, and we're aligned. But we want to do it right as well. And I think if you look at like the Vegas Knights, for example, it's pretty hard to argue that what the NHL has done with expansion or new teams has been pretty incredible to have that kind of a run.
Yeah, the Golden Knights just won the Stanley Cup in their 6th year of existence. Pretty impressive right there. Now, Smith went on to say that a deal to bring the NHL team here to Utah would not necessarily hinge on a new arena to be ready from day one.
We can make do, but if you actually just back up around the experience, there's probably a better experience than that. And I think that's probably part of the consideration and how to go through that. The good news in Utah is I think there's a lot of optionality, and our fan base is growing everywhere. So I think we try to focus on getting the franchise first and then figuring out what the best options are.
It's going to take more than just deep pockets to get another pro sports team here to Utah. Jeff Robbins with the Utah Sports Commission says that these leagues want to know that there's a sustainable fan base before making an ultimate decision. And Utah has proven with smaller, less well-known sporting events that we do have a strong sports DNA here.
When you're looking at building a sports DNA, when you're looking at saying we want to host MLB, we want to get an MLB team, we want to maybe get the NHL here, maybe at some point in time the NFL. They see those kinds of influencers. They see the UFC taking place in a market like this that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. They look at the Ironmans that's never moved out of Kona. Well, what are they doing there? They look at Tony Hawk and what he's doing in the partnership we have, and all of the other things that we're doing. And certainly we build equity with the professional franchises.
Is there anything that isn't in place right now that could make our position even stronger for something like an MLB team or an NHL team?
One of our really key strengths here is you can get public officials, community leaders, sports leaders. I don't think anywhere in the U.S. you can go in and gather the kind of support we can from those kinds of people. Mm-hmm. So when you're competing for things, that makes it much, much easier. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, in some ways, our secret sauce.
Now, this push for more professional sports teams actually started all the way back during the 2002 Olympics, says Robbins, and it adds up to a greater opportunity for Utah to expand the evolution of sports, and it plays in our favor. Later in the newscast, we're going to take a closer look at how Salt Lake has to do things a little bit differently than Las Vegas, which has been attracting a ton of pro sports teams, what we have to do different to get a team here to Utah.
Few people in Utah have more knowledge about the inner workings of professional sports than Steve Starks. Steve worked for the Jazz for many years. He also serves as the governor's Olympic advisor. Needless to say, he's tied in. Recently, I had the chance to sit down with him for a long conversation about the future of professional sports in Utah, particularly Major League Baseball. Here's a part of that conversation.
I think the market is ready for this, and what we've outlined are 5 things that we think differentiate Salt Lake and Utah as a market for expansion for Major League Baseball. And those stats speak for themselves. And so when you path for AL and NL West teams already. And so we're in a very strong position as we sit here today.
Big League Utah. How did this initially get into becoming what was rolled out recently?
It started with a conversation with Major League Baseball over a year ago. And we formally raised our hand and said, we want to be considered for expansion, and here are the reasons why. And that was met with enthusiasm for Major League Baseball, and we've had an ongoing dialogue with them. And so our announcement for Big League Utah was really the formal process of putting our hat in the ring and letting the world know that we want to be considered. Here are the reasons why. And And I think it's created a ton of buzz around the state and enthusiasm. And so that's kind of how we got to that point, and everybody's excited about it.
When you say meeting with Major League Baseball, who is that?
Well, it's the commissioner and it's the senior staff. He has a team that focuses on this. And so they've been great to work with. And you know, they've been clear that they haven't started the process formally for expansion.
From you, which major sports league would you like to see in Utah? You can scan the QR code to weigh in. 39% of you are saying Major League Baseball. Just ahead, we continue our special taking a look at why it would be more likely to bring an NHL team to Utah before an MLB team, and what Utah has to do differently than Las Vegas to attract them. Welcome back to a deeper look into Utah's prospects of bringing another professional sports team to Utah.
Yeah, a lot of buzz and talk about this. The experts that I've spoken with feel that it would be more likely to bring an NHL team to Utah before a Major League Baseball team, simply because the NHL could actually play right away over at the Delta Center. Although not ideal, they could do it, and a baseball stadium would actually need to be financed and then built before an MLB team might come here.
What I'm hearing you say is big names in the sports world want to come here and do business in Utah and participate in what Utah has to offer.
Yeah, and I think what you're seeing is a change. You remember years ago, one of the questions always was, will somebody come here? Could have been an athlete, could have been a team. And I think we've evolved and grown, so you don't hear that nearly as much.
Well, a lot of the rest of the country is looking at Las Vegas right now. In the last few years, they've added an NFL team and an NHL team, and it looks likely they're going to add the A's as well, a baseball team. So, can Utah build a sports hub in the same way Las Vegas has? Experts say no, no one really can.
I think we're on a different trajectory than Vegas, but I think in some ways a trajectory that's fits kind of who we are as a state.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, Vegas is doing great things, but we're doing it a little differently.
How would you say we're doing it different than Vegas?
Well, because they're not going after all the events that we are. They're kind of playing to the strength of their tourism industry with professional sports.
Yeah.
Because what drives so much of what Vegas can do is their revenue from the tourism industry, the hotel revenue. So when you're able to drive that much revenue, you have the ability to fund things that's different than most states. Hats off to them, but that, because they have such a huge hotel base and get transient room tax from that hotel base, it allows them to put $400 million into something like an MLB team.
Sure.
It allows them to put almost $1 billion just under into the Raiders.
Sure.
Most states, most cities don't have that, certainly cities, don't have that revenue base to fund teams like they do.
Bringing more major league teams to Salt Lake could also benefit the players. Brian Schnee spoke with John Stockton about it. And Brian, what did he have to say?
Jamie, he says a deal like this could help build camaraderie between our local sports franchises.
I think from a player's standpoint, it would be fun. I think one of the things that every other seeming city that we went to and we talked to those players that they really enjoyed was the relationship with other professional players in other sports, the ability to go to those events as well, you know, and be the spectator and not the spectatee. I think it'd be a ton of fun. Now, Salt Lake City, the Buzz games were as much fun, and I enjoyed those as much as anything, and my kids did too. We loved those games, and I think Salt Lake supports those teams and would support those teams magnificently. So I think it'd be fun.
John references the Buzz there. Those were the Bees. Continuing our coverage, I spoke with Jim Nantz, well-known sports broadcaster, about his thoughts on bringing either Major League Baseball or the NHL to Utah. Here's what he had to say. Given your experience in Utah and your love for the state, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to bring another pro sports franchise to Utah. Do you think the Salt Lake City market would do well with either Major League Baseball or the National Hockey League?
I think on both fronts, the city would do really well. I mean, just look at the way the city has embraced the Jazz. I was around in the old Salt Palace days, and I mean, Utah is much bigger. There's a much bigger corporate presence there, which you need when you're going to have a professional sports team. Back in the days when I worked at Jazz, we had 30 of the 41 home games at the Salt Palace, and 11 of the home games were moved to Thomas and Mack, the basketball arena in Las Vegas, and we beamed all those games back to the Salt Lake City market. But things have changed, and all you have to do is say, okay, well, what have they shown us? What is the market shown us? And the market has shown everyone that the Jazz and the Jazz placement in the Utah sports landscape is massive. And I think that it would work on both fronts. And I've been reading about recently some talk about a Major League Baseball team coming. I'm hoping it comes true. If it comes true, I think that I'd be a season ticket holder. I wouldn't be able to go to many games, Brian, but I would do everything I can to try to support the effort.
Still ahead on 2 News at 4, why there have been calls for a professional baseball and hockey team. There's also been movement for professional golf. That discussion just ahead. Earlier this spring, there was a major announcement to try and bring Major League Baseball to the Beehive State. Big League Utah, a coalition including Utah's federal, state, and local decision makers, along with business and community leaders, even former Major League Baseball players, announced that they are pushing to bring America's greatest pastime to Utah. Gail Miller, owner of the Larry H. Miller Company, said they had met with Major League Baseball nearly a year ago and wanted to be in the conversation about expanding the league from 30 teams to 32 teams. Gail said that it only makes sense that Utah is on deck to become that expansion team.
Well, Jamie, the proposed stadium would be built on a 100-acre mixed-use development on the west side of Salt Lake City. It's land owned by Rocky Mountain Power. In April, they broke ground on phase 1 of the Power District project, which is on Rocky Mountain Power's land. I went to the groundbreaking ceremony that day. I caught up with a few former big leaguers who are now part of the Big League Utah coalition.
I just love Rocky Mountain Power's vision. I love that they had a desire to do something in this location for this state even before they connected with the Big League Utah coalition. So you got two groups that are mutually aligned, even though 3 months ago they didn't know it. And so I think the location of it, the nature of what they want to do with this part of Salt Lake City, it just makes perfect sense and it's powerful.
And with the chance to bring Major League Baseball here, I just couldn't be more excited. This is a big league city, and like I said in my remarks, they've paved the way. The Jazz, the Olympics, everything that's been going on here, and now it's time, and this site is incredible. And so to have community, business, and political support, and we're ready to go.
What do you think could really make this happen? Obviously, this is a very good step, and there's probably been other steps as well, but what makes this happen? Yeah,
grassroots. That from here on out, it's going to be the grassroots of the people showing Major League Baseball that they support this move. Like I said, we got everything in place and everything's here. But when Major League Baseball sees what we can do as a community, they know generally, but when you come out here and feel what this community has to offer a Major League franchise here, that'll make the big difference.
You just heard from Jeremy Guthrie, World Series champion pitcher, and also Dale Murphy, just a legend in the MLB. Okay, I know there's a lot of talk about Major League Baseball and the National Hockey League, but quietly under the radar, there's been a ton of movement about professional golf right here in Utah. Black Desert Resort is in southern Utah. They just opened for golfers a few months ago, and a lot of the facility is still being built. However, they've already locked in the LPGA in 2025 and even sooner, the PGA Tour in fall 2024. Why did you want to bring professional golf to Utah?
It's almost like a why not? I mean, everything we're doing is like, let's do it the biggest, the most responsible. So we're by far the biggest resort in the state, but at the same time, we've broken the world record for renewable clean energy funding with our initiatives with water conservation and energy. Everything is about doing it at the highest level. And when there was a little bit of hand wringing about the PGA Tour brings, it's a major financial commitment, but it's like we didn't come this far and do all this to say no to the PGA. so it's kind of like, why not? You have to do it.
All right, I spoke with Patrick today at length about this. We'll share a much longer part of that conversation tonight at 5:30. We're streaming live for 2 News Live, Facebook, YouTube, KUTV.com, and the 2 News mobile app.
It's hard to buy a house right now, especially if you are a young buyer. Coming up, what young people are willing to sacrifice for their first home.